Good evening to you all. Welcome to the 15th webinar organized by Pallavan Learning Systems in collaboration with Center for Escalation of Peace and Ritinjali. My name is Choki Wangchuk and I represent Pallavan Learning Systems, or PLS, an educational research organization whose primary focus is on the concept of learning how to learn. And we believe in promoting learning and education as perhaps the most crucial tool in actualizing our potential in all facets of our lives. What Pallavan Learning System does is organize research, but in addition to that, we also believe in conducting seminars and conferences quite similar to the webinar that we're conducting. And we do this for the creation and dissemination of new knowledge so that what we do and learn at P11 at Pallavan Learning Systems remain current and relevant to the changing times. Over the years, we have conducted many webinars, 14 to be precise, and we have dealt with many topics. Some of the topics that we have dealt with include the future of learning, de developing a thriving community approach to promote learning. We have also dealt with issues such as the relevance or the irrelevance of formal education, asking questions such as, do degrees matter in today's times? And we have also dealt with technology in education. If you're interested in any of these webinars and would like to learn more, please reach out to us and we would be more than delighted to share detailed reports on each one of them. Now coming to the present webinar. Today's webinar is part of the first part of the two-part series that is designed to provide a nuanced understanding of how students, teachers, principals, school leaders, literally everyone in the education ecosystem, how are they using technology and AI in their daily lives, and how is that impacting the way they think, the way they learn, and the way they grow? The second part of this webinar series will deal with how coders, IT specialists, and policymakers are responding to people in the education ecosystem, and how are they refining technology and AI to respond to the needs of people in the education ecosystem. So we will be letting you know the date and the timing and everything for the second part of the webinar very soon. So please stay tuned for that. Now, I am pleased to introduce our moderator who will be presiding over today's webinar, as well as the second part of the webinar series. Pranav Sharma is an astronomer and a science historian known for his work on the history of the Indian space program. His specialization is in international networks of science and technology. He has curated the Space Museum at the B.M. Birla Science Center and has led many exhibitions on Indian space history. Currently, he is the co-lead of the Caltech History of Data-Driven Astronomy project, and he is also the policy and diplomacy advisor to the United Nations International Computation Center. In addition, he is also the advisor to the France-India Foundation and the scientific advisor to ARC Ventures. He has co-authored the book Essential Astrophysics, Interstellar Medium to Stellar Remnants, and his upcoming books that we should be looking forward to include History of Neutrino Research and History of 21st Century Science in India. Before I hand over the floor to the moderator, a note to the audience present here today. If you have any questions, if you have any suggestions, perspectives, discussion points, we urge you to share them in the chat box feature, and we will try to respond to them and get your questions answered during the Q&A session. Of course, general comments and insights from you today will be very much welcome, and they will for sure add to the depth of the conversation that we will be having today. Now, can I invite our moderator, Pranav Sharma, to introduce our panelists and start the discussion on this very important and very topical theme, technology and AI in education, exploring the benefits and unintended consequences. Over to you for now.
Thank you, Choki. Uh, so I'm very delighted to host this wonderful discussion today. Before we introduce what we're going to do today in broad spectrum terms, I'm delighted and happy to introduce and welcome my panel. We have three distinct pillars of the consumption and production of artificial intelligence in education. We have with us the educator, the student, and the school leader. Uh, I am pleased to introduce Sange to you. She earned her bachelor's degree in mathematics from University of New England in Australia, and she started working at the Royal Academy in Bhutan. She leads the team which is responsible for curating and editing the content for ebooks at the Druk Institute in Paro in Bhutan, and she engages with her students and the kind of questions that she's raising and asking and entertaining are where does the technology intervene in with education and how the educators are using those kind of technologies. So we'll be dealing with those questions when we come and interact with Sange. I'm very pleased to introduce Sonal Rawat to you. Sonal Rawat is a prolific educator. She's been a pedagogical leader for the longest time. She's the principal of Bluebells School in New Delhi. She's from Lucknow, and she's been in several important panels in education, including the CBSE project on contemporary education in 2021. She was awarded the Principal of Innovation as part of Youth Ideathon in 2023. She's been in curriculum development and change management for the longest time. The questions that she's been asking herself and her peers are how schools are adapting to technology and what are the challenges that are being faced in the school system. And the most important question, which I really liked that she shared with us, is are we ready for that technology? Where does that readiness lie? And moving on, I am very pleased to introduce Pranshu Narayan to you. Pranshu is a student in St. Mary's School. He's in grade 11, and he's the vice head boy of a school, and he's a scholar badge holder. And he's a recipient of the national level champions trophy in the field of abacus. The questions that he's asking is how the increase of usage in AI is influencing the diverse purposes of those technology, how are they being implemented in different divisions and ideas, and why non-AI assisted education still has a key role in shaping individuals. As we move forward, we will come back to the panelists, but I'm just to give you a little background on why are we meeting here, is that post 2022, when ChatGPT interrupted, or rather erupted into this great revolution that happened not only in education, but in several different realms of human civilization, we found ourselves at crossroads where we were asking ourselves that where does critical thinking lie? Where does creativity lie? What are those spaces where thinking can still happen? Where is that neural programming that makes us unique and individual? So as we move forward in the deliberations today, it's basically structured in three parts. The first part, we'll be hearing mostly from Pranshu and understanding then what is basically happening at the student level, and what kind of tools are the students using? Are they equipped to use it? What are the objectives these kind of tools and these kind of ideas, these kind of technologies are serving, and what kind of typical patterns they are being used in. Following which, we'll discuss with Sange and Sonal on the other side of the table, then when something like this comes to you, how are you handling it? How methodology or pedagogy is being influenced by uh, technologies such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, so on and so forth. And has it significantly improved the workflow, or has it not? Or does it have the potential? And are we ready for those kind of questions uh, in the systems that we're dealing with? Towards the end, we are going to talk about the runaways of these kind of technologies. What are the challenges and where does the opportunity lie? And of course, please share your questions in the chat box and we'll try to take as many as we can. So we'll first go to Pranshu. Uh, uh, Pranshu, the first question that I want to ask is uh, that let's just take a step back from technology and where do you think that non-AI assisted education has that role to play in the information overload age where everything is available on a click and you can churn as many information, as much amount of data through the machine learning algorithms, and you can learn whatever you want to, you can do whatever you want to. The world is the canvas. But do you think that this non-artificial intelligence based education, one, does it still have a role to play, and how?
Yes. So, first of all, before beginning, I would like to say thank you so much, sir, for providing me the opportunity to be on this panel. And I personally believe, as a student, that non-AI assisted education still has an extremely key role of shaping individuals, and that it does not simply lose its utility because of the onset of AI-based learning and resources, along with the information overload, which you mentioned, that is associated with it. I think, firstly, the important aspect which we need to consider is that AI can largely only manage the mechanical, or specifically the academic aspect, which is involved with education. And I believe the greater question which it leads to is, what is our very idea of education in the first place? Now, of course, different different individuals will likely have their own opinions on this. However, in the past 11 years of my schooling, I believe certain aspects, such as instilling the ability of being able to form coherent opinions without easily getting influenced by others, understanding others' perspectives, learning key values such as discipline, gaining the ability to be original, as well as incorporating the skills which would help us in leading a more productive life, are, I believe, some things which we cannot consider to be mutually exclusive from education. And I believe that if we only consider the mechanical aspect, which AI can no doubt greatly help in, it would be quite a streamlined view of education in the first place. And another point which I would like to mention is that the information overload, which we talked about, or how AI applications are nowadays making everything a bit too accessible, which I believe increases the responsibility, especially for us students, to be more careful towards what we choose to access and what we choose to use. And it leads to the need for making more responsible choices on our part. For
Pranshu,
instance,
just one second.
yes,
Pranshu, on that note, just because you talked about information overload, what
yes,
I uh, want to understand from your perspective is that when you look at the kind of education format that people like me grew up with, there was a coherence flow. You only knew when you were taught, or you just took something and there was just one bit and you follow that lead. Now, what over information overload does is it just equips you with lots of ideas and lots of information which you don't know what you want to do.
exactly.
Does it cause does it cause disorientation in the generation of learners? That's one question. Two, because we've seen a lot of burnouts that are happening because of information overload. What are your thoughts about it?
Yes, I think I would certainly agree with the fact that it does cause a lot of disorder. Even speaking from personal experience, it's because let's take a simple example. When we try to understand a particular topic, we try to start with the basics and then move on to the more advanced aspects of the topic. However, if the moment that we are starting with that topic and we are already exposed to each and every aspect of it, which we are likely not to understand till we ourselves are able to grasp the basics, I think it is definitely something which can be quite overwhelming. So I would agree with the fact that it is also another one of the reasons why a lot of the people from even along my peers starting to get are starting to get burnt out or are starting to feel that sense of overwhelmness from this.
So can you also take us through the kind of tools that are being used today and what kind of
Yes.
purposes they are being used for? And what has been your experience with those kind of tools, and what has been the experience of your peers? And if you've interacted with other people, what
Yes.
exactly is happening?
Yes. So I think first of all the tool which I should probably mention first is the most popular one, of course, ChatGPT. And the very intriguing fact about it is that its usage isn't exactly narrowed, but in fact it is quite diverse. May it be generating ideas, proofreading content, or subject-specific question solutions, or even explaining complex topics. And I think uh, keeping aside the negatives of it for a second, it is quite remarkable that all these different uses have been able to be integrated. And if I'm speaking from personal experience, however, I would say it has had sort of a counterintuitive effect on the activities of students for because for the most part, most of the students have now become more lazy in terms of doing or finishing their own assignments. And especially when we talk about abstract tasks or specifically literature-based tasks, because that is something which requires us to greatly put thought into it and then do it. However, because of this availability, a lot of people have also been uh, sort of resorting to only relying on it without using their own minds over it. Another AI which I think is worth mentioning is Quillbot, which is so it's an AI which is renowned for its advanced paraphrasing as well as summarization capabilities, which can provide serious help for research purposes. And this is again another AI which I'm speaking about from experience, as in research projects, a lot of the times we may not have uh, as in we may not have the time to look over everything, but if we want to be provided a quick overview of the things which we would have found, it could be really helpful. And there are also various other AIs which I think sort of just which sort of just point towards the sheer diversity of it. Because, for instance, one of my peers who's into music, there are also, I was surprised to find out that there were also very music-oriented AIs as well. A few to name are SoundDraw and Jukebox, which I think clearly shows that for most of the tasks which we receive in school, there are various AIs which we can use for it.
Okay. The one last question before we move to Sanjay, what I have for you is, I mean, it's a two-part question. One is, as a student who's studying in the age of information overload, in the age of frontier technologies invading spaces that were sacrosanct for a certain reason, in uh, other terms, uh, where technology is becoming inherent part of
Yes.
our living. And also, when you're growing up in a globally localized community, it's just not limited to where you live and what your geographical location is,
Yes.
right? Uh, Two things that we would really appreciate if you can expound upon is, where do you think education exists, and where do you think creativity exists?
So I believe that creativity is specifically something which is being threatened uh, by the greater use of AIs. Because again, reiterating about something which I said earlier, is that a lot of the students, which I have noticed, are beginning to lose their ingenuity, which I think is truly disappointing because creativity is something which we can't exactly learn all of a sudden, or or it's not something which could be given to us. It's something which we develop over time as we see different things and depending upon our own way of seeing things. So I think creativity is definitely something which should be kept in mind in terms of how we choose to use these AI programs, and we should ensure that our creativity is not at all threatened by this. And sir, I would really appreciate if you could repeat the
I, I
first
was
part
I
of the
was asking,
question.
where does education exist?
Okay,
Because if
education.
everything is available to you, you can create your own path and you can do whatever you want to do with it. Then this
So,
entire concept of, you know, the mentor-mentee relationship, the student-teacher relationship, the purpose of school, the purpose of university, the purpose of the entire education system. What happens to that?
sir, I believe that even with the onset of AIs, that part of education is not really threatened. Because again, as you talk about the peer-mentor relationship, there are so many things which we as students get to learn from it. We get to learn, we get to learn the values of discipline, and we get to learn so many other skills, which is simply just not possible in a purely AI-based curriculum because AI might be able to help us purely with the mechanical aspect. But when we talk about the other larger things which are associated with education, I don't think AI would be able to provide that to us. And it comes even in the smallest forms, which we don't expect. Let's say, for example, our mentor or our teacher is giving us some advice or if they have something personalized to tell us, then that is not exactly something which we can expect from an AI because it's not programmed that way to understand humans that well yet.
You
But
cannot expect it from machine learning, artificial intelligence algorithms today or ever.
sir, I think that's a very interesting question because depending upon how it's evolving, I wouldn't say that it's
As of
completely out
today,
of the
you have
question.
this
Yes,
opinion.
but as of today,
So we'll pin on that. I go to Sange. Pranchu, we'll come back to you about talking about the challenges and unintended consequences in the third part of the discussion. Sange, I
yeah.
thank you so much for joining us. Since you're a teacher, you are on the other side of the table. So my question to you is, which most fundamental one. With the questions of, see, as Pranchu rightly said, that creativity is something which is being challenged on a daily basis. When a chatbot can generate ideas, why do you need humans for? When a chatbot can write the assignments, why would the student not choose the path of least resistance? Right? Why go through the entire trouble of writing it on your own? And you can ask ChatGPT to write it, Quillbot to rephrase it, and then Quillbot again to do the AI detection. Then you take that text, put it on Humanize AI and ChatGPT, and then it's completely unique and everything. Now the question here is that where does that uniqueness lie? And as a teacher, what are the kind of things that you are facing in terms of the utilities of artificial intelligence algorithms, generative algorithms, not only limited to chat GPT, but their perplexity, there's Quillbot, of course, that is mentioned, but in different disciplines that this is happening. So how in your experience in Bhutan and elsewhere, you're from Australia, you studied in Australia. What do you think that uh, how are educators, especially teachers who are teaching in schools, are dealing with this kind of technological invasion in the classroom?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. I think before I answer your question, if we look at the evolution of the usage of technology and artificial intelligence in classrooms and education, I think before 2022, before the ChatGPT was launched, we kind of mostly used the internet to do some research, get a better understanding of the concepts. We went on multiple online websites, and the task there for educators or for people in general was to find the right website, to find the credible source, from where they take the information from. But from 2022, when ChatGPT was launched, I think that kind of became like a central hub of information where you don't really need to go to multiple sources to get information, and that saved a lot of time. I think from personal experiences, I've used ChatGPT a lot. I think the most AI platform that I've used in teaching and learning is ChatGPT. And firstly, I used it to do assessments. And I think for most of the teachers here, they would agree to me in terms of assessments, the written assessments taking a lot of time in terms of their daily work. So in assessments, like at the Royal Academy, we only have a maximum of, let's say, 30 students in a class, but in other schools in Bhutan, they will have around 50 students at the maximum. So in order to do assessments to each individual, that takes up a lot of time. So ChatGPT in that sense has helped a lot in terms of using it efficiently. But in the earlier days of me using ChatGPT, I found out that, like you said, there's challenges, right? So I found out that it gave a very generic assessment, like for after a while, all the assessments were looking the same for each individual, and that was not something that I wanted, because we treat each individual as different, right? So we can't treat them the same. So in those experimentation stages in 2023, I learned that you needed to ask better questions, more specific prompts, to ChatGPT, and not only the prompts, but also the input of the student assessment has to be better and more individualized. So through that experimentation, through that exploration, I think I could use better of and make most of the ChatGPT.
Sangit, the other question, just taking this argument a little one notch up. Yeah, we're talking about saving a lot of time. Assessments, of course, I understand to an extent, but in teaching, you're saying that the data churning and everything saves a lot of time, but at what cost?
For me, I think the most thing concerning here is over-reliance on AI, over-reliance on technology, and complacency of the teachers in terms of, okay, AI is just a click away, so why don't you just make them do all the lesson planning, the learning experiences? But for me, I think exploring different online courses on ChatGPT and how to use it better, the ethical implications and all of it, I just feel that if we go with the mindset of learning and using AI as a tool for teaching, then that would make it a little bit more better in terms of all the challenges that are there. For me specifically, when I teach lower grades in mathematics, let's say, for example, there are a lot of different strategies that one can use in order to come to the correct answer, right? So for me as a teacher, I needed to show that to the students in terms of saying, okay, hey, there's 3 different strategies, there's 4 different strategies. You can choose the one that you understand the best. And for some of the concepts, I think coming from the education that I've had, okay, I only have one kind of method that I use. So I use AI in the sense that what other methods are there? So in those terms, this may be a very simple example of how it can be used in teaching, but teachers can make use of that platform more, not just to replace what they teach, but also just to expand their horizons a little bit more. and then just to have that inclusive environment in the classrooms.
So before we move forward to Sonal, the most important thing that's been so far is, which are brought under close examination and question, is one, what do you mean by authentic? What do we mean by creative? What do we mean by original? When we are doing assessment, is the assessment original? Is the student who's writing that assignment, is that original? Where does that notion of originality lie? Now, we have Sonal Rawat with us. She's school principal, so I think there's where we'll do a little worldview kind of understanding that we want from you, ma'am. Is now that we know that we've just found ourselves in the technology, it's just not that we landed in technology. We just, one fine day we woke up and it was there. And it was there everywhere. It went beyond our control. Everything was talking to everything. Everyone was talking to everyone. It was like the social media eruption, where the fine lines of privacy just eroded, and the individuals started consuming themselves through their actions in the social media. Now the bigger question is, we've been talking about transparency, we've been talking about authenticity, we've been talking about creativity. Authenticity, creativity, originality are the fundamental pillars of education, right? So as a school leader, where do you think now all of these things will find place in the new system that we will have to make or adapt to? There's no choice. It's not a conscious thing that one is doing. It's just a immediate reaction. We found ourselves in the middle of the jungle. Now we have to find a way to survive. So it's like that. So how do you think that, in your experience as a principal, how the school systems adapting to these various kinds of technologies that are just there?
Thank you, Pranav. Good evening, everybody. I think I have to start with this quote to say, do not be afraid to give up the good to be great. And the reason is that this technology and AI has created disruption. But this is not the first time the humanity has faced it. When the wheel was invented, people always questioned that. When then came the Industrial Revolution, computers, and now with technology and AI. I would say that, we have to also look at what schools actually, what students carry out of the school, what teachers do out of the school. The school has, I would say, even I would be very limited to say that what does a school give to a student? It gives a culture. It gives you the academic, subject-wise knowledge, expertise. It also creates a lot of other experiences which come with your visits, which come with your various collaboration projects with other students, which come with their co-curricular activities. So somehow it seems to me that there is some kind of anxiety around this whole system of Chat GPT. I think that is what has led to all of this. But prior to that, we also had AI. We all know Alexa. We all know Siri. We never objected to that. It made our life easier. We also had, I wouldn't want to name the company here, but we had a very good system of adaptive learning system, which really helped teachers, especially in subjects like mathematics, where students' need and their ability was understood. The algorithm adjusted to that and build up the knowledge based on that. So I think in a way, this has become, we are moving away from a traditional teaching method, no doubt. It is becoming more personalized, more adaptive, more inclusive, more democratic. If you see how across within our country itself, the policymakers have made the changes, we have this various material available to us at a click of a button. I think that's fantastic. But I'll go back to what Pranshu started. Pranshu mentioned, and you also mentioned about authentic, creative, original. I think it also comes from building trust. it also comes from clarifying our intention as a school, that we expect our students to have certain attributes. And why is it necessary? Why everything has to be quantified? Why nothing can be left on trust as well? But having said that, as schools, we are adapting to that. So if there's a literature-based assignment, which is given to the students at home, and that Pranshu said, and very clearly, a lot of students use ChatGPT to sort of get the answer. But I think in a way, I'll give you an example of how we somehow train our students to achieve excellence is to look at an exemplar answer. So that is discussed in the class, and the teacher leads them through to say why this is an exemplar answer. So there are certain inputs given to them. Probably here in this space of a ChatGPT, the teacher is not there, and the child has just written a prompt, a good prompt, and he gets a good answer. And then he says, okay, make it more persuasive, make it more erudite, make it that. What is happening? There is some thinking happening here that how you want to better it. Unless, of course, there's a lazy student who says sort of picks it up and puts it across. But this copying of cut paste of answers is happening through ChatGPT, but it was also happening earlier, when one student would come back in the morning in the school with the homework done, and everybody else will copy from them or slightly change the answer slightly, but keeping that in mind.
There's a very clear distinction that I really have to make here, is the distinction between generative algorithms and non-generative algorithms. So educational tools were non-generative. They're tools that are equipped to enhance learning. That's a completely different ballgame altogether.
Absolutely.
And then comes generative algorithm, which writes for you.
Yeah.
Earlier, internet was not writing for you. Now you can train your GPT. For example, you take a generative algorithm. You train it on your own writing, which you've done individually. And then you ask the prompt, then it will write in your own writing.
Absolutely. So I'll give you an example of how teachers and schools are adapting to it. So suppose you tell the child to write an answer to a particular literature question. Don't give that. Tell them that you write a frame of answer. You get an answer of the same prompt from the ChatGPT. Evaluate. Compare your answers. Another option is that children come prepared. You do a flip teaching method. Children read through the chapter, read synopsis, read whatever they want to use, whatever algorithm-based generative the AI they want to use at home to prepare for the next day. But the task is conducted in the classroom. So teachers are adapting to that. Teachers are adapting to how to negate the authentic, original, creative aspect of teaching learning by ensuring how you modify your teaching learning strategies. But I think we have to also not overlook the impact, the positive impact of this generative AI in terms of how beautifully it is helping teachers immediately get a feedback on a student and them sharing the same with them when they sort of formatively assess or otherwise also. It helps them with, there's a teacher who's a young teacher who's just trying to create a good lesson plan, is not getting help. At least there is a starting point somewhere, and you keep adding some other inputs when you read through that, a lesson plan which is generated for you, and you say, can you add a case study to it? Can you add this to it? And it comes with a prompt. I do not see that in any way reducing the actual teacher and taught relationship in the class. The empathy, the task planning has to be done by the teacher. As Pranshu said, it's the procedural part which would be held. Yes, you are now able to evaluate as well, you're able to compare as well. But I would say that we have to adapt to it. Is there any way out of it? No. Is it helping the education, democratizing education across the country and the world? Yes. Are the geographical barriers being removed? Yes. Of course, nothing comes, we always have adapted as humanity, and we have to. There are challenges. There are challenges. There are challenges of privacy. There's challenges of, so much of data. Where is it going? Where is it saved? How will that be used? So that's not that the schools are actually the school leaders. We understand. We also need some kind of a support in that. So what are the security measures we have to take when we are using these tools? So these are the challenges we are facing.
We'll talk about runaways. Thank you, ma'am, for that perspective. Now, before I open the floor for questions in another 5 minutes, there are a couple of things that while I was listening to all of you have become very stark as an observation is that trust is something which is which used to be a crucial entity is turning to become a non-entity. And trust is something that cannot be measured, cannot be instilled, and we don't know how we do it. We don't know how we trust people. It's an instinct. Now, how in a methodology which gets you results, we have to be very pragmatic about it. It is giving you result, right? If I want to study, say, like X subject, and I want to excel in the exam, I can just go to this generative algorithm, I'll study it, I'll do well. It gets you result. So the path, there's a shift in the path. Ends, not means. Earlier it was means, not ends. There's a complete reversal. Now the trust is something that we really have to talk about, because trust leads us to two questions: plagiarism, copyright infringement. How do we deal with it? Where does the line lie? You taking data without sourcing, how are you doing it? Then the other thing that has become very obvious in my experience, at least, is that education used to be an experience which was more personal, right? When you're reading Hamlet for the first time, there's something that is happening in you when you're reading Hamlet for the first time. And every time you read Hamlet, there's something inherently. That's why there are certain people who like certain kind of books. And all of that was happening. There's lots of reading that was happening. Now, to write an assignment on Hamlet, I really don't have to spend time with the text. When am I spending time with the text? When am I spending time with, for example, when you're reading, say, Newton's laws of mechanics, where does that spending time with the text comes in? Especially in the case of literature, if you're not spending time with, say, Shelley, how are you understanding Shelley and how are you forming perspective? When you're not spending time with the fundamental ideas of physics, the discovery goes out of window. But it is getting you result. You're writing the answer. That's just right there. But are you spending the time with the text? That's a bigger question mark. And that leads us to more fundamental issue. Has education become transactional with technology that is now right there, right? So we'll do one quick round of comments with our panelists about runaways in especially in artificial intelligence and frontier technology. There are two terms that we're using. There's nothing called positive, there's nothing called negative. There's utility and runaway. What is it that I can utilize? What is it that I don't have control over? Right? There's no feeling attached to it. It's absolutely objective. So that's why the use of positive and negative doesn't happen. It's utility and runaway. There's no emotional attachment to technology. Okay, so we'll do a quick round of challenges, and then we open the floor for questions. Pranchu, I'll start with you.
Yes. So I would like to mention firstly that in terms of the challenges, I believe one challenge which I have personally came across, especially in recent times, is the fact that students of my age are slowly but surely losing their ability to socialize, which I think becomes more clear when we see that AI is not simply just limited to ChatGPT, but also chatbots as well, which people are beginning to use. And people solely relying, and there are certain people which solely rely on this for social interaction, which is, I personally feel it's not healthy because, again, one of the purposes of school is to provide us that environment where we could interact with those who are of our age. They may have different opinions, but it helps us in shaping our character. And
Anshu,
another,
just one second, that
yes,
just
please.
taking this argument a little further, is the
Yes.
inability to socialize comes from, like there are lots of people are having conversation on Reddit and Discord and everything. Is the inability to socialize come from this deeper sense of not owning up to what is being said by that particular individual? Are we losing that sense of responsibility of the said word?
Yes,
Because
I think
it's not
that's
that people are not talking.
hmm,
That's a completely wrong statement.
yes.
People are talking, but they're not owning up to what they're saying, right?
Hmm. Yeah, that's true. And I think that becomes even more clear when we look at the stark differences in the type of conversations which people have online and the type of conversations which we see them having in real life. Because I mean, when we are talking specifically online, then there is this sense of you could say yeah, that there is a sense of they can say anything and they won't have to sort of own up to what they said,
Or
or
face the
they won't have
repercussions.
exactly, or they won't have to face the consequences for it. But at the same time, if they would be saying something like this in real life, then it would have stark consequences. So I think that is definitely true, that them not owning up to what they're saying is also definitely one of the problems.
Yeah, in real life has become a thing now,
Yes, exactly.
which is
The
very
words in real life.
surprising. In
Yes.
real life has become a thing.
Yes, exactly.
Sange, your comments?
I think the biggest challenge for teachers, I don't mean to generalize, but from my personal experience, it's again going back to over-reliance on AI. So teachers' complacency and the laziness of, coming up with newer ideas and just replicating what's there on the AI. And I'm saying this because I think in schools as teachers, students kind of look up to you, and because they are in a generation where they have access to laptops, they have access to internet, they know when something is directly copied from the internet. They know the language of ChatGPT as well as we do. So I think as teachers, uh, we need to rely on AI. We need to use AI because it is a technology-driven world that we can't ignore. But at the same time, we need to use it properly in the classes. If we use ChatGPT, like I said earlier, asking better questions, using it as a tool rather than making it as a replacement of our thought process. Like we said about critical thinking skills. Like we don't want to think, so we'll just let AI think for us. I think that's the wrong mindset to get into. As long as the educators have that mindset that it's a tool that we can use at our disposal, it has a lot of features. It has even a greater potential to do a lot more than it's doing right now. As we impart that mindset onto the students, I feel like the students can also, make better use of the AI platforms. They can use it for the betterment, not only to simply replace it, but also just to use it for learning. And like I said, AI tools, they are tools to learn. They're not tools to replace thought processes. And the students also need to know that. And there are many online courses, on ChatGPT, and there are online courses. Students will take those online courses, but as educators in the classrooms, you need to raise that awareness. We need to be the
So,
ones.
so what, thank you, Sange. So what Sange said is repeated, it's just underlining the sense of responsibility which is brought under question.
Yeah.
We move to Sonal. Yes. What are your thoughts about
So
challenges?
I feel that as a school principal, I think social and emotional well-being is one concern, because we are not only looking at AI tools which support personalized adaptive learning or intelligent tutoring for our students, but there's also other tools which they're using, which are also impacting them, which are, there's addiction and they're not able to overcome that. So one is that challenge. Of course, the data security is another measure. In terms of the teachers as a team, I feel that we have to start looking at how do we create those assignments and those kind of questions which actually push children to think, where even if they have to use ChatGPT or any other generative AI, they still have to be giving themselves to that. They have to be themselves answering them, their personal opinion. So I think we are trying to work towards that. There are some great things we are doing, but I would say that Viva was collaborative project, flipped classroom, are the three common strategies which normally we are using to overcome, like you said, non-engagement or not being there but still having presented the answer. So I do hope that as the systems adapt to it, we will make the best use of this generative AI, and it will be beneficial to the school education system.
So that's one distinction that I want to establish here, is that having the information and knowing something are completely different things, right? So even if when you're asking me a question, I can give you the answer, which is right, that doesn't mean that I actually understand. That's the reason why I was saying about spending the time with text.
So that is what I'm saying. The challenge remains of how the teachers have to create these questions, whether it's for assignment, whether it's for Viva was, their task they have to plan, where one is able to evaluate whether the student has learned, has understood, has been able to apply. So how do you justify, what do you think in your personal opinion? All these kind of, what do you infer from that? So where your personal perspective comes at certain points, I would say in terms of literature. Otherwise also, even in other subjects, why should we only talk about literature? Any other subject, children can produce answers without actually participating in the whole process of understanding and applying that knowledge. So this is the huge challenge the school systems face at this moment. But I am sure as you've overcome everything else, this too will be overcome.
Now that we have some questions, we open the floor for questions. The first thing that I think it's a great question is that how can teacher address the wrong concepts learned by students through ChatGPT? That is the most important question. So I will take quick comments, and quick means quick, from both Pranshu and Sangya. So Pranshu, you go first.
Okay. So I think the way in which a teacher could address it without sort of bringing down the students' morale is that they could encourage them to do the same level of thinking, but uh, but in terms of trying to reach to the answer themselves. They should appreciate the effort that they put into trying to find an answer for it, but at the same time, they should try to encourage them to just make sure that that process happens on their own, that they
No,
themselves
I'll rephrase
explore
my
it.
question. I'll rephrase my question.
Okay.
It's not about doing the effort and then it's just completely different question. The question is, for example, you learned something wrong about Battle of Plassey, and now you've written
Yes.
it, you've understood it. You did not consider the standard text. ChatGPT hallucinated something. You come back and you're not calling it Farooq Siyar, you're calling it somebody else. And you have 500 different ideas about, say, Battle of Plassey. And most of them, for example, are wrong. And that never happened. How does the teacher address that? So Pranshu, I'll come back to you, but I just need to go to Sange and then ask. I mean, you understood the question, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Sange.
So when it comes to wrong concepts, I think that also is where teachers can come in. But I guess the tone that you take is you need to be gentle, I guess, in a way, not to crush the morale, like Pranshu mentioned. But in a way, just talk about implications of using ChatGPT at the same time. Because personally, for me, from my experience, I've done a lot of questions and I just wanted the easy answer key for me to distribute to my students. So I asked ChatGPT the whole 20 questions and I just copy pasted. I didn't review it, right? I didn't check with any other resources as well. I just gave it to the students and the students find a fault in it. So similarly, it's a wrong answer given to the students. So similarly, the students can come up with understanding of wrong concepts to the teachers. So I can kind of use that experience and tell them, like you really need to check other resources and not just ChatGPT. And apart from ChatGPT, I think that time is when you tell the students, you also need to check with your peers, how they have understood it. Does it really compare? And then, just to find out where it went wrong, or maybe they are wrong and you're correct. And that's also where I think the role of a teacher comes into place, where there's someone you can ask who's not of ChatGPT, who's not a peer of your own standard, but a teacher, right? So that's where the role of teachers come into place, where you say, okay, madam, I've done this research, I've gone through so many things, and I've come to this conclusion. But where did I go wrong? And as a teacher, I think you need to have that ability to, of course, the correct answer, but also to say, okay, this might be where you went wrong, the kind of questions that.
So I think because we have very short time, there's one question that I want Sonal to answer, which is a good question that has come in, that AI has the potential to significantly optimize the learning curve by personalizing educational experiences and providing tailored support. I kind of partly agree with it. However, this advanced technology may also lead to a longer learning curve in certain contexts. How do we deal with that so teachers don't experience burnout?
I'm sorry, how would the AI lead to long learning curve is not clear to me. But
because people get diverted. I mean, that was the first question. That if somebody has done a wrong learning, then you have to take them back, and then you have to take them in the completely different direction.
So I want to actually create a differentiation here. When we're looking at ChatGPT is one of the generative AIs. So if this talk is only about generative AI, then yes, it would be a challenge, because what Pranshu said and what Sangi said makes sense, that it's wrong. How do you undo that? So you refer to implications, you refer to text, you refer to your original text to which you are using in the classroom. But I think what I have been throughout the webinar referring to is also various generative AI-based tools, which are very specific to certain subjects and which support student learning. So if we're using generative AI subject-based tools, they definitely differentiate personalized learning. So there is no way there would be a longer learning curve. There would be a deeper impact. There'll be more personalized learning. Yes, using an open AI source could lead to a longer learning curve, but that is also one of the implications of using without discerning the topic. So there is where the school role comes, that if we have to use generative AI to support a student learning, then we sort of take these programs on board, or we inform the students. There's a what they can use, what they can, and these don't come free, so they are at a certain price, but which are very, very specifically tailored to the process of learning. So I think we have to be very clear on this thing. So ChatGPT and other BARD and all, they are very different to what I've been always talking about.
Okay. There's one very interesting thing that has come up, which it's important to address before we close the session. Somebody has asked that I would be very interested to hear More from the panel on the role of diverse learning and teaching methods such as peer learning, group learning, and how these might complement or provide alternatives to challenges created by generative AI. Sange, what do you think? Quick comment, and then I want Pranshu to actually answer this.
So I think, like the person mentioned, peer learning, group learning, and these do take away like the challenges provided by AI, right, in terms of over-reliance and wrong information. And this also touches upon what Pranshu said about social and mental well-being of the students, where they need to be more social. So as a teacher right now, I also still use these methods, and I still find these methods to be better in terms of exchange of information. But again, there's limitations to that also. So,
Pranshu?
Yes, I think so. I think that peer learning again is one way that we can certainly at least balance some of the at least some of the unintended consequences. Because even if we talk about in terms of the authenticity of information, as you mentioned earlier, that a lot of the information which we might get from ChatGPT may not actually be authentic. And let's say we take that information, we go to the class and we find out it's wrong. But at the same time, if there are a group of people working on it, then there are lesser chances of us getting it wrong. Because if, let's say, one person gets the wrong information, then you have others to cross-check it. And I think even in terms of generating that brain activity, which really makes you interested in doing school tasks, is something which peer learning can definitely support. And as ma'am mentioned earlier, it could also help in reducing the social. I mean, you could say that in terms of how students are may not be very social or rely on ChatGPT a lot for the same. It would help in increasing their interactions with their peers while also helping them to finish these
So,
tasks.
Sonal, one quick comment, and then I'd like to close it.
So I have been talking about this when I said collaborative tasks. It definitely, look into all these aspects of ChatGPT and otherwise also, where children sort of debate, discuss, and think aloud when they are doing a project together. It's very helpful. If it's well planned. We also looked at peer learning and peer assessment and self-assessment. All these strategies are already in place in I think I would say, especially in Delhi and in north of India and on top schools of across the world, I'm sure. So these are very good strategies otherwise also for social and well-being of the students, for community working together for inclusion, and also for creating that thinking within the group. When the team together sits together, thinks together, and works together on a certain project, it is really a joy of learning which also comes from that, and which I think the point we have not touched in this webinar. How do we create a joy of learning?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sonal. Thank you so much, panelists. It was a great discussion. We learned a lot. We asked so many questions. And I would like to leave our audience with two fundamental questions. That yes, in this age of information overload, in this age of generative algorithms, in this age where we are, questioning the fundamentals of education, we're questioning the concept of trust. We're talking about an anxious generation. The two questions that I would like to close it with is, in this age, can discovery happen? And most importantly, can poetry happen? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pranav. Thank you so much. I think I'm talking on behalf of everyone when I say this webinar was very interesting and gave a very all-rounded view of how teachers, students, school leaders are really tackling technology. The one thing that really came through for me was that technology is definitely here. It is here to stay. But what we need to be careful about, like Pranav mentioned, is how do we take the utility, the good side, and really be conscious, really be cautious, both conscious as well as cautious of the runaways. How do we make sure that all the unintended consequences that come with AI is tackled? And I think that would make a really, really good topic for our second part of the webinar when we talk to the AI people, the ones who code, the ones who design learning systems, the one who make policies on AI, because there is a lot of issues that needs to be dealt with. There's the issue of responsibility, there's the issue of social, emotional well-being, security, privacy. But what I'm also taking away from all this discussion is how important the idea of non-AI assisted education is. While AI will help us with mechanization, with technical part, there is a big part of education that can only come with the human touch, like we say. So the idea of being adaptable, I think Pranshu put it really, really firmly when he said, what are the things, what are the skills that make us live a fulfilled life, right? So the idea of forming coherent thinking, analytical thinking, but at the same time finding meaning in our lives. So thank you very much. With that, I would like to thank the organizers, all the team members at PLS, CEP, Ritinjali, who helped us in organizing the webinar and ensured that the entire process was seamless. I would like to thank our moderator, Pranav, and the three panelists for this very illuminating discussion and for their very valuable, very personal experience and perspectives. And finally, thank you to the audience for listening in, for posing questions and engaging in discussions on the chat box, because that really added depth to the topic at hand. Your participation, your enthusiasm is what keeps PLS and all of us growing and learning. Once again, thank you, and I hope all of you have learned as much as we have. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Choki. Thank you so much. Thank you, Pranav. Thank you.
Thank you so much.